We have a fantastic line of speakers for both of these events. Please check the website for more details. Data Ops, future-proofing your data platforms, all about increasing the industrial strengths of our data platforms. That's a virtual event on February 17th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And in April 6th and 7th, we have Advancing AI, a 2-day physical event in Melbourne, which is going to be around finding more use cases for AI, increasing the adoption, increasing the use cases, all within your organization. I'm super excited for these two events. I hope to see you there. I wanted to say a big thank you to our sponsor, Talent Insights. Talent Insights are Australia's leading data specialist recruitment business. They are experts in recruitment strategy and delivery for analytics and data teams. They are the go-to recruitment business for all your data roles in Australia, and they can help both with permanent hires and short-term project-focused data resources. I've used Talent Insights in the past, and I've always found them fantastic to work with. Visit them at talentinsights.com.au. So that was trend number 2. So trend 1 was MLOps. Trend 2 is Data Ops. Trend 3 is really interesting one, which is the low code / no code AI. And this has been great to see, and at times it can be a bit divisive, but it's so important for us to have this and to do this well. So maybe I should start by saying that maybe with a bit of context. The advancements in AI, actually, let me make a note here first. The advancements in AI and the merge with software engineering have allowed for more and more automation in the ML and AI space, where for a few years, we've seen AutoML tools, both from companies and open source. And then we've also had higher and higher level APIs in order to create machine learning models. And now we're going into this frontier where you can create AI and deploy AI with very little code being written by the creator of the product, or the creator of the model. Very little code written, or no code written, which is obviously heavily relying on, both of these are heavily relying on AutoML, and they're essentially an extension of AutoML. Now, this is quite divisive for people because sometimes people feel a bit disappointed or almost like a bit cheated to say, oh, like I've been studying data science or machine learning for all this time, and turns out that there's just like these applications where you can create it with 2 or 3 clicks, and they're like, oh, that's a bit demoralizing. But it's not that you need one or the other. You actually need both, and the reason for that, maybe the reason first. The reason for that is because because of the advancement that we were talking about before, that we have an increased need for using more and more AI, and an increased number of use cases need AI. So as an extension of that, essentially most or almost all people in organizations need to have an understanding of AI. And I personally think that should come before using these low code or no code alternatives. That you need to understand the strengths and weaknesses of AI, what it can and cannot do, how to think about your data set. Even if people don't have the technical skills to put that data set together, you need to understand what are the implications that your data set is going to have on your algorithm, and then understanding the variable that you are trying to predict and how that influences what the model can do and what what it's going to look for in the data, and etc. So you need to have this conceptual understanding of AI. Sorry. I think that people need to have a conceptual understanding of the data and of AI before using these low code or no code AI tools, because AI is just such a critical technology that the more people that are understanding, the more impact it's going to have in the world. So I definitely think that pretty much everyone in organizations need to have that understanding. And then once we have that, or as we move to that vision, then the low code and no code alternatives for AI are going to help us get, hundreds of thousands or millions of people per year using this technology for their use cases and to solve their problems and to be able to productionize these ones. So there will always be a space for the handcrafted models, for the AutoML side, and for the low code, no code. And essentially the low code, no code is GUIs, is GUI interfaces, which a lot of programs in the data space were GUI based, 10 years, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I know that early in my career, I worked with a lot of GUI based data preparation tools, data modeling tools, and this is kind of like GUI based tools for AI, and and we definitely needed to increase the adoption through our organizations and to have more and more impact from this technology. I also think that low code, no code AI is the future, because if you see a lot of the or some of the cutting edge research that we're seeing in AI, there are things like having people talk to a system and the system being able to create something just based on the human description. So sometimes people are describing, say, an image or a photograph or an animal, and then the AI is able to create that image of that animal just based on what people are saying. So there's a speech to text component, and then there's a text to image component in the AI, but it can all be done by speaking. Similar to that, we've had cases where people are doing building. There's an AI that builds websites based on a text description of the website, and you can test it. We'll try and find the link. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you can test that by going to this website and essentially there's like a text box, and you start typing there. It's like, I want a green page with a red button and to have a picture at the top and a text box and this, and you start describing it, and the AI builds it. So it goes from the English description to the website, to the HTML code. And progress in areas like that is going to mean that more and more people are able to create their websites. And obviously today there's assistant tools that you can use, like Squarespace or like Wix, where you can create websites with no code. But then this is expanding that from it being software driven to it being AI driven, and that you can use kind of like natural language to be able to describe what you want the computer to do, and the computer understands and does it. So I think that's where the future is heading. That's how we're going to be interacting with computers in the future, and more so they're going to be able to interact in ways that are more and more human, and that will probably be, in the coming decades, we'll be doing away with computer interfaces like the keyboard and like the mouse, and it might all be, and this might be like way into the future, but it'll probably all be audio based, So you can speak. You might be able to have other something that recognizes hand movements or gestures, or it'll be more based on touch screens, etc. But the interfaces on how we interact with the computers is going to change, and AI is going to be a key component to that. And within that, we're going to have more and more advancements in low code and no code AI that are going to help us more equitably distribute the capabilities of these technologies, and help us lower the technical barriers that exist today for people to start using and getting value in delivering these at scale. So I'm excited overall. I'm excited by this trend. I think it's going to make a big difference, and I'm keen for what 2022 is going to bring, but I also think it's one that's going to continue into the future. So that was trend 3. Now let's move to trend 4. Trend 4 is something a change that I've noticed recently, where I'll tell you the trend or the change that was happening before, and then I'll jump into this one. The one that I saw before, which is very similar to this one, is before we had chief analytics officers or chief data and analytics officers that were making the jump to CEO of organizations. So, and sorry, I should have said that this trend is about changes at the executive level and how data analytics are being perceived, and what the changes are being, the changes that are happening at executive levels and boardrooms. So before we had chief data officers, chief analytics officers making the jump to CEOs. And obviously it wasn't everywhere and it wasn't widespread, but it was a trend that I was particularly excited about, and it's a trend that continues. And one of the latest ones was, last week or the week before, the head of AI from Twitter became the new CEO. Excellent. That's happened a lot in Australia, and it's a fantastic move, and one that in data futurology we hope that we can support people in making moves like that by bringing more business understanding and commercial acumen to technical people in the field. And for the business people that are out there, we want to be providing you more of the technical understanding and more understanding about AI. So you can also make those jumps. And some of the movements that I've seen in executives in that space is that sometimes they go from chief data analytics officer to like chief marketing officer, to sometimes to CFO, and an interplay of those, and then sometimes CEO, and sometimes straight to CEO, and that's fantastic. And I think that's something that is still playing today, a trend that's still going on, and it will continue. Adjacent to that is this trend 4 that I wanted to mention, that is going to pick up speed in 2022, which is a combination of chief technology officers with chief data officers. So they're coming together, and now there's quite a few roles, and there's more and more roles that are chief data and technology officers. And I've discussed with organizations who are looking for people like this around what they should look for. In my job, I now have that position as well, that combination of leading data and leading tech. And I think it's critical as part of the business transformation, where data is a business critical asset now, and that this needs to be available throughout the organization in a reliable manner. So related to the trends we were talking about before. And now or I guess maybe in the past, we sometimes had technology departments separate to the data departments, and we're cousins. So we're quite close together. We have to work together. But in being separate, we sometimes had different priorities. And as more organizations want to be more data driven or data centric in their structure and their organizations, there's now an increased need for data to drive the data needs of the organization to drive the technology agenda. Where 3 or 4 years ago, it would have been the other way around, where the technology is available and then the data uses the technology that's available. I think that would have been, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Now it's the shift, and this trend that we're going to continue to see is the other way around, where the agenda is being driven by the data needs of the organization, and technology is there to support it. And that means that by combining these, these roles into the chief data and technology officer, it means that the core systems, that the business systems that might be operational systems, that now they're going to be looked at and designed from a data perspective. That means that the way that the data is being captured in our systems is not going to be disjointed from where the data is being analyzed, but now we can bring them together and we can have tighter feedback loops that we might have data people and data scientists consulting or advising how the data capture systems and the operational systems are designed, created, and how the data is stored within them, and then how that data can flow back to the analysis systems like the data warehouse, and then beyond to visualization and machine learning. But having this merge is helping us have technology systems that are putting data as a first-class citizen in the way that they capture, store, treat, and then share the information. So I definitely see that at the moment it's more progressive organizations which are doing this. I see it happening more in small to medium organizations, but it's definitely something that I think is going to continue to happen. And there's going to be larger and larger organizations that are going to do that. And I'm super excited. I'm super excited by that. So essentially, what we're seeing, even at a bigger level, is that data analytics executives have the world is their oyster. The options that we have as data analytics executives are huge, that we could step into a technology role or to blend it as this trend we're discussing in this trend, blend it as a chief data and technology officer, or we could step into a chief marketing officer role, or a chief financial officer role, sometimes like a chief operating officer role. I've seen that too. And then obviously stepping into a chief executive officer role into CEO. So that's fantastic. In the podcast this year, we had Jose Murillo, who is the chief data analytics officer from the second largest bank in Mexico, which is a huge conglomerate. And for example, he has the marketing, a lot of the marketing function, which is the consumer marketing. He has that function reporting to him. So he owns the CRM and the communications, and that's being done in a data-driven way. And I love that. I find that fascinating that the experimentation and being data-driven almost comes ahead of marketing in this case, where marketing is looking well into the agenda that data can drive, and that influencing what marketing focuses on and can do and how to operate. So I love that. That's fantastic, and that's definitely a trend that we're going to continue to see into next year and well into the coming years. In terms of the chief data analytics officers, executives in the data analytics space, moving to adjacent executive roles and then moving up to the CEO role. So definitely the world is your oyster, and we hope, and we at Data Futurology, we hope and we aim to bring you the different perspectives from people who are doing that, so you can hear about and learn about what it takes to make that move, what it looks like, and for you to start thinking about it so you can do it too. That's what we're really excited by and proud of, and that's why we're mentioning this as one of the trends. Awesome. Let's go trend number 5. Let me type this here. Trend number 5 is a combination of data governance and information security. I think that in the future, they're going to become one and the same. The reason why I say that is because data governance, when it's done in a traditional way, it almost forces data governance to look at the way that the work, that the analytics work is being done, and to govern the things like data access and the process of how the data is being used. And when you're doing that in traditional ways or in old school ways, when you do that in traditional ways, data governance is always or usually forced to be on the sidelines as a watcher of the work, of the analytics work being done. And the data governance is looking from the sidelines and putting in the data access controls and governing the way that the data is being used and that the work is being done, but they're always kind of like adjacent. I think what's going to happen is, or what I think is required to make data governance, to put data governance at the core of the data analytics work. What's required to do that is an increase in automation from data governance to improve the way that they use technology and to leverage it to be able to have greater data discoverability, greater and deeper understanding of the data, but also where it lives, how it can be better treated for better business use, and to improve the access of this data. And I think for that, we need to have greater adoption of software, more automation, and to be able to, as I said, have this software be able to find all the data, know where it lives, understand what is there, be able to apply some ML and AI to do some clusterings, to do some understanding of what's there, and then being able to serve it to people. If you're also then able to govern access controls, how the data is being transformed, and then how it's being served, if you're able to govern those from a more automated perspective, more in a software based, and ideally what we want is data governance as code, because then you can really mitigate your risk. You can have scalable data governance. And in the same way that, in MLOps and DataOps world, we're seeing infrastructure as code and deployments as code and use of containers and etc. We want to have data governance as code that will help just improve the level of service, the coverage, and be able to put data governance at the core of the data world. And I think to do that, there needs a higher level of technology skills and technology literacy. We need high level of technology literacy and technology skills from our data governance people. And I think that the people that are going to do that, just one dude's opinion, personal view, I think that it's going to be the information security people. because they come generally with good technology understanding of the technology, good software engineering skills, and additionally good policy and governance skills. So I'm not saying that this is the only way that it's going to happen, because data governance people can also skill up their tech if that's where you see that that the gap is, or maybe there's like tech people that are interested and want more policy and governance skills, etc. Which the policy and governance skills is a lot of kind of like soft skills, or what's typically seen as soft skills, that sometimes it's defining the policies, and then that needs to be done in conjunction with the people, a lot of times in conjunction with the people doing the work, because then they have to follow the policies that were set. So that's kind of like pillar 2. And then pillar 3 is checking that the policies and procedures that were defined were followed. So you have the 3 components: defining the policies and procedures, enacting the policies and procedures, and then checking or auditing that the policies and procedures were done. And that if this can be done through code, then it can be definitely done at scale. To be able to do that, the most common gap is on the technology skills and technology side, to be able to close that. So that would be super exciting. I think it's out of the trends that we've spoken to today, it's probably like the one that's on the slowest growth and maybe earlier in the adoption. And I think it's going to also continue to grow for quite some time, and it's going to be, I think, super exciting. And overall, I think across the board, more tech skills and more automation are needed, because I remember, for example, many years ago when I was at university, one of the growth industry at the time was hardware, right? This is how old I am. The growth industry was hardware, and the saying back then was that Intel, the processor company, Intel, would have to hire every computer engineer or every hardware engineer. Yeah, every computer engineer. Intel would have to hire every computer engineer graduating from the US by like 2006 or something, was the prediction at the time. And that's because the growth in demand in hardware was growing significantly. There wasn't enough people. It was a skill that was in shortage. And essentially, like, university students were being told, like, study hardware engineering because that's what's in super high demand. And I did a lot of courses in hardware engineering as a result. And then what happened? Like, Intel hasn't hired all the computer engineers from the graduating from the US. It would be impossible. And what's happened is that there's been better tools to do that work. So a lot more automation in order to do that work in a more scalable way. So much so that now it's not like the area that is experiencing the most growth or the most need. Those areas, it's kind of like data engineering, machine learning engineering, cloud engineering. That's where the scarce talent is now. And these areas that I just mentioned, these engineers in the data space, they're going to be in short demand for a few years. And then there's going to be obviously an influx of people training on those skills, but also better and better tools that provide better automation. And we're going to define standards of doing the work that are much faster for us to get the work done at scale. And then there's going to be something else that's going to be very much required, and that'll be kind of like the new frontier of innovation, of learning, of understanding. So there's always something else coming up. But I think a critical and common thread throughout them all is having an increased technology skills and obviously increased data skills for the people that need more data literacy, and that combination is more and more required, and it's definitely super critical. And then if you're able to combine those two with domain expertise, then you're a weapon. Like then you can do anything in that space and take over the world. So those are the 5 trends in data analytics and AI for 2022 and the following years. You got a couple extra ones there, which one of them is the rise of the engineers in the data space. And we spoke about the move of chief data, the move in the executive space from the data analytics executives to other roles, and that the current one that's growing is moving to the technology or blending data and technology. And then a freebie from the last one, which was around data governance and information security combining. The freebie there was that having more technology skills and more automation is what's going to help us meet the demand for the areas that are in very short supply, and that's going to make a huge difference into shaping the those competencies and those capabilities that we see today in short supply. And also it can help us improve the reach, the repeatability of areas that are critical today, such as data governance and information security, which are key. Awesome. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening to our trends of 2022 and kind of like end of year wrap up. We are super excited and geared up for a huge 2022 at Data Futurology. We have a big lineup of events, both virtual and physical. And we're going to be releasing a lot of podcasts as well. We're going to keep interviewing leaders. We want to keep covering the content that is most interesting for you. So let us know what you want to hear about. And we're now creating more broader themes that we can tackle over a number of weeks between physical and virtual events. So tell us more about that. We're going to continue covering AI. We have our Advancing AI event coming up next year in 2022. We also have our Data Ops Summit. We're going to do the ML Ops Summit again. We're going to do vertical specifics in retail, in healthcare, in finance. We're going to do an event around strategy and governance and how automation can improve that. We're going to do an event on the rise of the rise of the engineers in the data space. So analytics engineers, ML engineers, data engineers, software engineers, cloud engineers, etc., all in there. And more. So we have many more things, exciting things coming up in the pipeline. Thank you so much for supporting us, for being an audience, for coming on the show. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to our end of year wrap up plus the trends for 2022 and beyond. Thank you so much. We couldn't do this without you. I hope we're helping you in your journey. Let us know if that's the case. Can't wait to see you in 2022 and beyond. Thank you so much. Have a great end of year holiday period. And hope to see you back here next year. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thanks for watching this video all the way to the end. I hope that you got a lot out of this discussion. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel so more people can find out about the challenges that leaders have in the analytics and AI space. And that's what we're trying to share in Data Futurology. So please like and subscribe. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Thank you so much.